Okay, so in today's video, I am going to show you how to add your cording to your piece. So to start, we have our needlepoint, which has been laced to a board, and then our fabric, which has also been laced. We've got our cord ready, and then we have some invisible thread, and typically I use a beading needle, but you can use whatever needle you want. You just want to use something that is a little bit thinner because it will leave holes behind. Okay, so now what we'll do is cut off any long tails or anything that might stick out. And you're going to take your front piece and center it onto that back piece. Make sure the back piece has the correct orientation. So for instance, this would not work. And then make sure it is nice and centered. Okay, and then once you do that, typically I will add a little clip to the back of mine just to ensure that it will remain nice and centered. And this is also a really great opportunity to just make some last minute edits to your piece and make sure it is going to be as straight as possible. Okay, so when I first started, I used to add just a little dab of glue in the middle, and then I would let these sit overnight and attach. But now I actually skip that step, and I'll just use one of these little clips and clip it in the middle. And then that way, as I'm sewing, it does allow me to kind of adjust the boards as needed. And, you know, if you glue it and they're not straight, it does begin to get difficult to change it. So now I have my cording. Which I am going to attach. So this is going to be a sign. So it's going to have a loop at the top like that versus an ornament that would have one like this. In the future, next time I do an ornament, I'll show you guys how to do the ornament loop. But basically I want it to start here, go all the way around, come back up, make this loop, and then it's going to tuck behind this. So in order to do that, I'm going to put my cording in here. And I'm going to leave this little knot hanging out because I don't want that in the middle of my piece, just because it will add some bulk and we don't want that. Okay, so then I just added a little pin so that way it would stay right here. And just be really careful not to poke your fingers or anything, because you don't want to, of course, get any blood on your finished work. That's not fun for anyone. It's pretty gross, so just be really careful. And then once you have your cording anchored, typically I'll hand twist it a few more times just until it hits the look that I like. Just, you know, so it's a little bit tighter. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with this twist, so I'll go ahead and anchor it in over here as well. Again, making sure to not poke my fingers. Okay, and then we'll just move around and continue to do the same thing. So corners are a little difficult. Sometimes you want to go ahead and twist it, add another pin in just to keep everything the way you want. And be really careful that you're not having that pin come up the top, because if you grab it, you could prick your finger, and then again, no one wants to have an injury or stain the needlepoint. Okay, and then I keep just kind of hand tightening my cording as I go. It's already pretty tight, but I like this step just because it gives me a little bit more control over that final look. And it allows me to ensure that the cording has the same amount of twist all the way around and that it doesn't get too loosey-goosey. And I'm just going to move my clip around. So you see how it's getting loose right here. That's what would happen if we didn't continue to hand turn it. And so for that reason, I always just make sure to add a few extra twists as I go. Once you sew it in, it's going to keep that tightness, which is really nice. So we just have to do this for this step, but in the future, once you start sewing, it'll kind of hold itself in place. Okay. And then I'm going to add a little pin. And I am going very slow because ultimately I want these to be real time. I don't want to convey that this is something that can be done quickly, and if you're not doing it quickly, then somehow you're a failure. I want you guys to know it is a slow process. And also I want you guys to be able to pull these videos up, have your project in front of you, and do it live with me, if that is something that you choose. Okay. Have this hand twisted. I am pretty happy with it. And then I'm just going to pin it up in this corner as well, in front of that first little piece of cording where we started. Okay. And then I'm going to keep hand twisting just to make sure that it stays nice and tight for us. For this top part, you do want it to be a little bit looser, because if you hand twist it too much, it'll loop back on itself. And then you want to get about the size loop that you want. So I think that is a pretty good height. And then what you'll do is just pin it behind this corner we had over here. And add a little pin, and typically for this one I'll actually pin it to the backboard, because what's going to happen is we are going to tuck it into this piece right at the corner. Okay. And I have all this extra cording. I just leave it for now. It will be cut off once we get tucked in, but I don't want to cut it too soon, because then it'll start to fray and kind of unravel everything. Okay, so once you've got this to this point where you have a general outline of what that cording would look like, we can start to sew. So then to do that, I typically will start. I have my needle and invisible thread. I'm so sorry. I know it's really hard for you guys to see, but essentially it is double-stranded, and then there's just an old-fashioned knot at the end with maybe about 1/2 inch hanging off. And then what we are going to do is find our anchor point. So typically I will start about 1 inch from where anything needs to be tucked into the piece or anything like that. For this one, it is getting tucked in right at the corner, so I'm actually going to start there, because we do have a little bit of flexibility and I want to make sure that is nice and tight in there. So what I am going to do, okay, so one important thing that you need to keep in mind is the direction of your cording. So as we sew, we're going to go through the piece and then back through, but we're going to follow the direction of the cording. So you go straight through underneath the cording, like so, and then on your way back, you're going to follow the route of the cording. You're going to go through 2 colors on the cording, and then when we come out the front, we're going to end up about right here. So I know that is so difficult to see, so I'm going to show you guys again. With your needle, you're going to go through your needle point all the way to the back, grab just a smidge of this fabric, and then go straight through. And on your way back from this fabric, you're going to go through your cording between these 2 colors, like so. Follow the direction of the cording, pull it through, and then when you go back into the piece, you're going to go back where the 2 colors meet again. So you're going to come in through here and then back through the piece through here. That will give you really tight cording. As you do this, you can start to cheat and maybe do like every other color, but you really want to make sure that it's sewn on tight. And that also will determine the direction that you sew. So for instance, I wouldn't want to start back here because I'd have to go through and then I'd try to go through my cording, but it would be in the wrong direction because I needed to go this way and my cording is twisted that way. So what I'm going to do is start over here, and this will allow me to go through my boards, again, not touching the cording, and on the way back over through my cording between the two colors and back into the front right where these two colors meet. Okay. So again, I'm not going to tuck this one in quite yet just because it's going to get tucked in at the very end. But I will want to make sure that this knot is not included. So I'll kind of place it half tucked. This top part is not getting tucked in, but where this cord is down here, we'll go ahead and tuck that in. It may get more tucked as we move along, but we just want to tuck it enough that we can start sewing and then cut off this knot. Okay, and then to sew, we're going to go through the needle point. Straight through, grab just a little piece of that fabric on the back. Try to get fabric from the underside. That's how you're going to avoid holes on the side and the back of your piece. Pull it through and just let that knot catch. Don't pull so hard you pull the knot through. Just let it through until that knot is nice and secure, and then we're going to go back through. So we're going to go between the cording, two colors of the cording. Okay. And pull through. And again, we're going to go right back in where the cording and the needle point meet. Okay. So that's straight through. Grab just a little bit of fabric and pull it through. Now for these first few stitches, I typically don't pull them through that tightly. And the reason for that is I don't want to undo this knot, but I do want to get it started. So if you don't pull so tightly, it will give you that grace to add some additional stitches later at the end if it's loose. And then I'm just going to take these scissors and cut off this knot. Now that there's enough in the piece that it's not going to go anywhere, I'm just going to cut it off and tuck the rest of that in. Now I may end up tucking more of this cording in at the end, but for now, just getting rid of this little piece that we don't need. Let me actually get some stronger scissors, or some flatter scissors, I should say, to tuck that in. So I don't have those scissors in reach, but I did have these pliers, so I'm just going to grab that and tuck it in there. Okay, perfect. And then now what we're going to do is start getting a little bit tighter. So as you go through your cording, you're going to go right to where the colors meet. And while you're doing that, make sure you're pinching your board and your needle point together as well, because that will give you a really nice clean finish, and it will ensure that your cording stays kind of on that center point. So I don't know if you've seen, but sometimes you'll get an ornament and like all the cording will be sewn onto the front, but not really onto the back at all, or it kind of moves around. It's not very steady. So that is why we do it this way. Okay. And one thing to note that's so important is that when you are sewing, you follow the direction of the cording.